name, designation, and organization. Our experts will answer up to 5 to 6 bucketed and shortlisted questions at the end of the panel discussion. The chair for this webinar, Professor Dr. Vandana Naran, Dean NIFT, who is such a familiar personality, is also a very senior academician with over 35 years of experience and is associated with NIFT for over 25 years. She's been the campus director of NIFT New Delhi for 6 years. Under her leadership, NIFT New Delhi campus was ranked 12th among global fashion institutes by the COE magazine and Business of Fashion, rated us with 3 stars. So welcome, ma'am. Thanks for consenting to be the chair yet again on the 4th webinar. And we are all inspired by your true leadership. Friends, let us welcome our first panelist for this evening, a person with intimate knowledge of the crafts tradition of the country, having worked in the field for over 40 years, a leader and expert in this field, Ms. Jaya Jaitley. She graduated in English literature from Smith College, USA in 1963 after studying abroad in many countries. In 1986, Ms. Jaitley founded an association of craftspeople called the Dastakari Hath Samiti, which enables traditional workers to gain confidence in the marketplace through many innovative strategies. She conceptualized and established the Delhi Hath, a greatly popular craft marketplace in Delhi. Her work in bringing together craftspeople of many countries in design workshops is seen as a major contribution towards soft power diplomacy. She is a prolific writer and has published several books on various crafts. She created a vast documentation of the arts, crafts, and textile of India through 24 highly artistic and unique maps of all the states of India. A Podium on the Pavement, USPD, is a selection of her writings on a variety of subjects, including politics, foreign affairs, craft livelihoods, women, and social issues. She has recently guided the digital photo documentation of 52 craft stories in India for the prestigious Google Arts and Culture an online platform adopted subsequently by the Ministry of Tourism under its Incredible India program. So I was blessed to have a glimpse about this when Jayaji was there in Bangalore. And currently, she is heading a task force of the Niti Aayog on child marriage, infant and maternal mortality. She serves as the on the General Assembly of the Indian Council of Cultural Relations of the Government of India. Her 3 decades in active politics has widened her knowledge and appreciation of the socio-economic value of India's cultural heritage. Welcome to the webinar, ma'am. We are pleased to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Our next panelist is a time-honored designer who explores contemporary expressions of traditional Indian crafts to develop a restrained yet diverse design vocabulary. The one and only David Abraham, Managing Director of Abraham and Thakur, one of the India's most successful and respected brand for fashion, accessories, as well as home textile products. The design label was initially established by David and Rakesh, graduates of the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad, who were later joined by Kevin Nigley, a design graduate from NIFT New Delhi. Each of his collection continues the exploration of developing a quiet and modern design voice while simultaneously drawing on the rich traditional vocabulary of Indian design and craft. The design sensibility is a low-key yet highly distinctive with a strong respect for material, form, and craft. David reiterates the belief that real luxury lies in the specialty, especially crafted products in limited numbers of high quality. Welcome to the webinar, Mr. David Abraham.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next person is an alumni of NIFT, a very close friend of ours. He is very illustrious. Pallab Banerjee, currently working as Group President, Pearl Global Industries Limited. He's an enthralling and an enthusiastic speaker. Trust me on that, as I personally experienced on various occasions. A 1992 graduate of AMM, and with 28 years of experience in apparel sourcing, manufacturing, international retail. Pallab worked for Gap Incorporation for more than 20 years, joined as merchandiser and was Vice President Global Sourcing of Woven Garments and also Managing Director for India operations for 4 years before moving into manufacturing. So who better can know about this particular field, Pallab? Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And there was a 4th expert, again, an illustrious NIFT alumni, Sanjay Garg, founder of Raw Mango, who was supposed to join us today, but unfortunately, due to some exigency, which is personal, he is unable to join, but he has conveyed all his best wishes for the show and assured that he will join us in another platform whenever NIFT is going to host him here. So our sincere apologies on behalf of Sanjay for not making this. So now over to Professor Naram, the webinar chair. Ma'am, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining once again on a Sunday. This is the fourth webinar, as Raghu said, and 4 Sundays you people have given us and joined us to hear our experts talk about the important issues. Today's issue is very, very close to the heart of each Niftian, and we have a very eclectic mix of experts here today. I'm going to start the first question from nobody else but Jayaji, because there is nobody else better than to answer this question. How do we leverage the strength of localized production by integrating them with design professional and government agencies to strengthen the Indian contemporary expressions for the global market?
I think the most fascinating thing which we have to remind ourselves of is that production of craft was always local, and it started local. And whenever it reached global proportions, even during colonial times and before that, it was still always local production. It was never in very large workshops or in factories or any such thing. And it was the strength and the skill and the resilience of the craftspeople then that we see even today. And I think we should never look at them as a weak sector. They have strengths that we will never survive with. We go down because of our easy city living at the first instance, but they have a grit and a strength which I saw even during these last few months of the early COVID days and the difficult days. Now we're coming to live with it a bit. And the thing I saw, which are 2 quick examples I'll give you, is that people who never made masks before, people who were doing shibori or tie and dye or ikat or traditional painting, all ended up designing the most beautiful masks. And we actually, in order to serve them and their market interests, where we were really pretty helpless since e-commerce was difficult to hop onto overnight, we did in just 3 months, 7 lakhs of business purely by making one PDF on different designs of masks and supplying from our office, which is not really a supply center. So this was their level of production, which is still going on. And we've had orders from Singapore and USA. And then the next thing they did was create COVID themed paintings, which is another fascinating subject. COVID, like we say the Patachitra of Kalighat, or all of those are stories of their contemporary times. At one time, Rama and Mahabharata was contemporary in their lives. And today, there's just still storytellers, and they're doing that. They have moved with the times. It's we who have to open our eyes and recognize it. And I think the thing to do now is to link with the brilliant vision that we've been given of Atmanirbhar Bharat and local, go vocal on local, and local is global. All these things combined together give the young designer, and I especially want to address the Niftians, that focus on the village, because that's where real life is. Most designers who've gone back to their own home states and worked there have been much more creative, productive, and happy. And they've also learned to link with local bodies, the part you said about government agencies. When there is so much of what is emphasized in the central government as cooperative federalism, it's not just giving the states their GST share, it's giving the states responsibility to develop craft and handlooms in the way that we have always been passionate about doing. They are far more interested in the state in concrete results. In the center, it's a lot of file has gone off your table, you've signed it, and it's gone on to the next person. And you pass policies. Everything is paper, but it's not reality. I have had 25, oh my gosh, my dog is barking, I'm so sorry. But living in Kashmir, close to the administration, with my family in the administration for 25 years, we were most satisfied that you could write something on the file today, 3 months later, a bridge would be built, a hut would be made, a school would be started. It's like it's more fascinating, I think, being a panchayat leader today than the prime minister, because you can actually see things getting done. This is what the designer must do when they go to rural areas, link with the state government, get their schemes into operation. And the designer's biggest forte is contemporary design, the understanding of contemporary design. So what the designer goes with is a new world. Link it with the current world that is living, but from the eyes of the craftsperson. Link it to local things. If there is local production of, say, tea, it's near a tea estate, create baskets out of bamboo for them. If there, I know a friend of mine, a young designer who settled in Sikkim, who's making bamboo trolleys to push heavy loads in wooden in little village roads, which are like airport trolleys, but little different device. Make things which are for local use. Then if you perfect them and improve upon them, they can move to the city. And anything out of that which we are anyway exporting, anyway is collected from the villages. So that's not so difficult to go global. I think it's local, providing local, that's important today, so that migrant workers don't leave without hope and come and sit in city misery. So there's a lot of social consciousness and design, everything that can combine. So I'm very excited about this and being asked this first question, because that's exactly what I've been thinking about all these months.
Thank you so much, Jayaji. You have given a very interesting insight. And yes, we also migrant workers during the pandemic time when people were moving from one place to the other. And yes, we cannot afford to have a second round of that. David, can I request you to give your view on the same question?
Well, I think I would just like to start by remembering how, which I mean, we all are aware of this, but I think we need to recollect it more often, that there was a time in history, and not that long ago, when India was the greatest producer of textiles to the world. We were, everything from printed to woven to embroidered fabrics came out of India. Till a few hundred years ago, we were the center, and that had carried on, that trade carried on for centuries. Indian textiles and Indian craftspeople produced products that were appreciated, were consumed, that were essential to the material culture of societies all over the world. From North Africa, textiles have been found in ancient Egypt, through Europe, and during colonization also, Indian craft reached the entire world. Now, there's a reason for this. One, of course, is that the level of craft in India is exceptional. I mean, we have to just admit it. It is really exceptional, especially in the international context, because we are probably one of the last societies or the last economies or countries that actually does have such a wide encyclopedia of craft that is living, and that can still be done. The second point in connection with this is that the reason why Indian textiles were also so appreciated and the Indian textile trade was so enormous all over the world was really not just the skill of the craftsmen, but also their ability, as Jay has just pointed out, their flexibility, their ingenuity, their willingness to trade, their willingness to engage in conversations all around the world. We were the ones who exported the great chintz fabrics out of India. We exported chintz to European cultures. The Indian craftsperson engaged in a dialogue with all the traders from every culture, found what they wanted, and manufactured it within their local setups and sent them out. And in that way, became an extraordinarily powerful industry. Now, this is history, but it's also something that is still very, very valid today. So that is one point, I think, where, when we talk about Indian craft as a producer, as a manufacturer in this space, within the context of this conversation. The second is that we are addressing this really to young NIFT alumni and students, the designers of today and the designers of tomorrow. And I cannot repeat this more time. I keep on repeating this. To me, it's just terribly important, is that the Indian designer, whether he's a fashion designer or a textile designer, is incredibly privileged. we are sitting in a situation which you will not find other designers have access to the skills that we do. And we are actually privileged because of the craft sector. I think to be a designer in any other economy, particularly in the West, I mean, I have young designers who come and intern in my office sometimes, and I interact with young designers. The kind of opportunities that the Indian designer has because they have access to craft, which can manufacture and make things in small quantities. They do not have to wait for, they can even manufacture very, very small lots. So it's economically feasible. It's of very, very high quality. And they're talking to makers who have a tradition and a tradition of skill and knowledge. So the Indian designer in fashion and in textiles is actually in a very privileged position. And this is something that I think that we have to incorporate more and more into the products that we make as designers and engage with the sector, because it allows us to also manufacture small quantities. Craft is ultimately luxury. I think we have discussed this many times before. You know, we are now at a time when we are aware that manufacturing locally, small scale manufacture, buying local, these are now ideas which have come of age again. And we're all beginning to become very aware how important it is, particularly in the times we're going through. And I think that this is the time when designers today need to take this and run with it, because I think this is a great opportunity. I'm not talking, I'm not against the manufacturing sector, because I think that's, I'm sure Palabil has had experience in that space. It's equally valid, it's equally important. They have to coexist, because one can produce one kind of product, but we are fortunate that we can produce both. And local and small manufacture is the luxury of the future. Making things by hand is luxury, and we have to be able to support it. We need policies that recognize this. We of course we need governmental policies, but we also need private industry, because private industry can also do a lot. And we have to be able to focus on this and make it a very important statement.
Thanks, David. And I think you, as one of the design label, Abraham and Thakur has taken crafts to a different level. And Sanjay, that's why both of you were invited to this panel, because the students can learn and the graduates can see where it can be taken and how the bar has been raised and it can still be raised further. Yes, we are very fortunate people because we have living traditions. But I'm going to ask Pallab to give his view on this before we move to the next question.
Ma'am, like I am a little far from exactly where the karigars are working and the Indian crafts that is getting promoted, or how to market it. I think where like definitely Mr. David and Jayaji like has spent their life, and like the kind of contribution that you have made, like I don't have that expertise on this. I can only contribute by asking or basically just giving my thoughts in terms of how to ensure that this doesn't go on shrinking. Basically, from a layperson's point of view, I think that generation after generation, the number of karigars that is working on this area, is it going up or it is going down? Because there is a tradition, there is that culture, and there is that, I would say, that way of expression, that style that got created. And a lot of it has also reached to the international market. Like, of course, like both of you, and especially like Sanjay also, like in recent times, has really done so much to really give that platform to it. But then in general, in a larger scale, is it going down or is it going up? That's something like, do we measure it? Do we keep a track of it? And like, if we have to, can we give a little bit more platform by giving it much more contemporariness? Like Jayaji mentioned that whole thing, like some of these karigars are expressing today's ideas, which is not only valid for within India, but maybe in international market also. Like there could be some kind of messaging which can be done in the styles. We have seen like very common example is even in blouses and shirts, that ikat style always comes in. Like every few years, it is in fashion in the mass merchandise. Even if you go to a Walmart kind of store, like which is like absolutely mass market kind of branding, there also you'll find that kind of design, which is typically from India and maybe from few other parts of the world. But then that has always been adopted and accepted by at that level. Uh, can we do with the others also? There are so many other rich traditions that we have. May not be exactly in the same form, but somehow in some other forms, that style can be used to communicate more contemporary ideas or more mass market ideas. Maybe not exactly in that same Karigar's things, but that idea is still conveyed. Like even if a t-shirt, which is showing incredible India and having a Taj Mahal on it, maybe like certain style of the designs and art that we have seen in the past or still like tradition exists. Because when I talk to my daughter or some other people like who are living in the cities, even in India or let alone abroad, they're missing this rich culture and heritage completely. So, okay, some of us definitely go and buy something or show them that. Or I would say, like, there is definitely an opportunity to put it on a, very mass scale also. Some of this, just the ideas, just the communication part of it. Not exactly the craft, but maybe like, so if you have that, people know about it, then they value that craft also much more. That number should not go down. That's like my concern if I have to contribute to this question.
I just would like to not remind you actually, because you graduated in 1992. But from 1992 to 2020, 2020, NIFTians now, each and every student at NIFT goes and studies craft. They are with the craftsmen for 15 days. In pandemic, what we are doing is we are doing online sessions with the craftsmen. The technology has made it possible that we are having workshops with the craftsmen. We have a virtual bazaar going on in Gandhinagar, a virtual bazaar. Today also it must have just completed today. They started 2 days back. Each student goes to the craft sector, studies the crafts, and studies what the micro and macro environment over there is. They can't teach the craftsmen. Our craftsmen are too good. And as David said, this is a luxury area. Crafts cannot and should never become mass market because we are losing the value for crafts. But yes, students are getting that exposure. And now NIFT offers 2 seats in every campus for wards of craftsmen. Artisans and craftsmen have a special quota, and 2 students are taken from there. And this started last year, and this year again we have taken all 34 seats. And slowly and surely we are working towards it. All of us on the panel, I not as a person working in the craft area, but being a fashion educator, we have been doing it. Jaya ji has spent her entire life. You have read how much she has contributed. David and Sanjay are 2 of my favorite designers who I go and buy things which they may not know when I go to their shop and buy. But today I decided not to wear anything of this thing. But these are the people who are really revived things. But for Indian industry to survive, both manufacturing as well as the crafts area has to go hand in hand. So getting back to the next question, and this goes to David now. How will we continue to emphasize the nuances of textile craftsmanship in India that encompasses almost every known technique of weaving, dyeing, printing, and embroidery, and the need to develop policies to protect the future of the sector? What should the policies be, and how fast do we need them? And I would add something that apart from policies of the government, what can designers do?
Thank you, Vandana. I think that's a very important question, particularly in the context of the contemporary market. You're right. We have the widest repertoire of skills in every area, from dyeing, printing, and embroidery. And these are, I think we also need to acknowledge that the reason also why we're talking about this is primarily we are not talking about, I mean, I'm not talking about this from the point of view of sentiment. I'm not sentimental about craft because I think it's a romance. I think it is an expression of humanity. It's an expression of the individual. And this is what we are confronting today in the crisis we're going through. This is what we're confronting today as the environment is now deteriorating and collapsing around us. We need to go back to the individual. We need to go back to the one. And we need to realize that it is these skills and these crafts which are actually going to be the wealth of any manufacturing scenario. So that's one. But policies now in regarding to, I mean, there are many policies that would help. One, of course, is marketing. Marketing is a very, very important function, and that has to happen at every level. As Pallab just mentioned, that he felt that the younger generation, perhaps his daughter was not as aware of certain crafts. I think you mentioned that's a very, very valid point. There may be a lot of young people who are not particularly aware. Now, how does one bring that knowledge to them, and how does one bring that engagement? And that is through contemporary design, because, you know, if we produce products that people wish to use and that are meaningful to people, that immediately builds a relationship between the product and the consumer. And the craftsperson, as I've just mentioned earlier, is the most versatile manufacturer. And in history will show us that the Indian craftsperson has always risen to the occasion and has been able to produce product for the most difficult and complicated markets around the world. So I do not see that as difficult. I think it's just about building the links and bringing the knowledge, exchanging knowledge. I think those are very important, and creating products for these new audiences. Two, I also think that in the marketing effort, we also need to prioritize also skills which create, if not high-end luxury, but at least affordable luxury. There has to be a distinction between the mass manufacture and the handmade. We have to value it. We also have to value it also in the pricing structures. If we're going to continue to underprice handmade product and expect it to compete with cheap imports from, say, China, I think we're losing the battle. Because I think it's our responsibility also to ensure that the maker is rewarded by the effort. That's very, very important. And that is another part of the marketing strategy, and it's a policy decision that has to happen all the way from top to bottom. And the third one is one that has engaged me and made me think for many, many years now, because, you know, in my company, we have done a lot of craft-based product. We tend to work within the smaller section of the retail market, which is more high-end, more affordable luxury. We work with smaller stores. But we have also been involved in doing manufacture for larger companies, for example, like, you know, who have tried to buy from us in the past. And I have found that unless the main problem is when you deal with mass manufacturers, they cannot deal with inconsistency. They want every 100th product to look the same as the first product. You go to a big JC Penney, or you go even to a smaller one like an Anthropology in the US, which we have worked with, or Crate and Barrel, I've also worked with them. They cannot understand irregularity. They cannot understand inconsistency. These are the major drawback for the craft industry if we're talking about going global and engaging with these buyers, with these markets. And I think that comes in from education. I think it comes in from attitudes that are set. Why does every single piece have to be the same? I can never understand it. I know why it is, because I think when you look at systems and when you talk about planning within the manufacturing setup, if you're going to be training your quality control inspectors, they have to follow a set of norms. They cannot deviate. So if something is 1 centimeter from this line to this line, every stripe will have to be 1 centimeter from this side to that side. If it goes by even 0.1 millimeter, they reject it, because they haven't been taught how to look at a product in entirety. Everything is broken down into tiny, tiny modules and is examined from that perspective. Now, this is understandable when you're talking about systems, when you're producing very, very large manufacturing. But perhaps we need to revise that. Perhaps we need to look at this whole problem and look at it from the point of view of how do we perceive product, Does every product, if I buy a t-shirt or if I buy a shirt and it fits me beautifully and it looks very good and it performs, I think quality is essential. We don't want the buttons to fall off. We don't want all the color to come off in the first wash. Those are quality issues that we need to be concerned with. But if I want to do an e-cut shirt and expect that every single e-cut motif is going to be the same distance from the other, I mean, it's meaningless. Because what you're really doing is you're then canceling the whole idea of human in interaction and individuality. Go to a machine then. So you see, there's a conflict here. And I think that this happens actually should start also at I think it needs to start at the level of education. How does one educate within production systems? I know you have a GMT program. How does one evaluate? If I were to manufacture 2,000 khadi shirts, obviously every shirt will be different. In fact, every few inches, because of the beating of the beater, in fact, every bit of yarn as the person is spinning the yarn will also depend on the pressure of the person's fingers. Now that has to be viewed as positive qualities. We have to learn to understand that at a larger scale, these are also values that need to be incorporated into product. So to me, this is my response to your question, Vandana, that we may need to go back to basics and relook at certain things and see how these issues can be communicated across the entire supply chain, right down to that consumer who's buying the e-cut shirt in a mall in America, with whom I've had this experience. And we eventually we worked with a company that wanted us to do a handmade collection from a very large company. We had to actually convert it to machine-made product because they couldn't handle the actual craft. They came to us for craft, but they eventually bought it as a machine-made product, which was ludicrous.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as you said, the beauty of the craft is that we have to accept its differences. Pallab,
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. This is a topic like where we can speak quite a lot. And I think the couple of good things that has happened, what David, you just mentioned, that consistency that is required by these mass retailers. I think that's more because because we have passed through that era where like these stores used to be huge. And when you're putting a product into the store, like one particular section has been devoted, maybe 200 garments of the same style is displayed. Like I had that challenge in Old Navy or Gap when we are retailing it. Like every garment that then they would see, okay, the store should look good. It should have that consistency. So that's how this whole thought process started. The good thing is today, most of the retailers are realizing that brick and mortar has become too big. Now people are actually shrinking on the brick and mortar stores. More and more sales are going to happen, or is happening now, at least in the pandemic era, is through the online. So immediately that particular correction, which should have happened earlier, is happening. So it's a great opportunity for this craft kind of product also, like where you have an inconsistency, still it will be seen and it cannot be exactly the same. I think that appreciation is definitely there. So quality, on the other hand, of when you're doing a mass scale, like do that initial research. What is the quality that is needed? That means the color consistency, or not consistency even, but that fastness of that color, or the strength of the fabric, or the yarns or the threads, the performance of what the product that we have made. I think if that education is also like what I really, I think NIFT's great initiative is that when our students are interacting with them, I'm sure like some kind of exchange is also happening. That, okay, like if you make this kind of correction, then immediately your product integrity part, or basically that the quality of that product in terms of performance will go up by a few notches, or maybe like tremendously. So I think those kind of technology transfer continues to happen. Then it's like, even the artisans who are making it, they also get learned, like, okay, what kind of chemical has to be added to it, maybe to make it much more consistent, or the color fastness to light and all things are also important, which they may not have known or may not have really worried about in past. So those kind of things is a good infusion. Ease of use, what you make of that product, how easy it is to use and how easy it is to maintain, will definitely give it a different kind of acceptance to the product. So earlier, maybe like, if you are talking about only like, which is an exclusivity of this art, then maybe like, it's not that easy to or at that mass scale, like, can it be cost is down, more people are wearing it, and also they're easy to maintain that garment. So that's something like, definitely we can look at the khadi shirts and what defects and what is not defect. Like, if I see that there's a huge amount of buy that is happening from the Japanese market of Indian textiles, especially this khadi and this kind of, artifact or basically artisan kind of product. I'm supplying to a customer called Muji in Japan. So most of their fabrics are coming from Murshidabad or from other places where like they have their QA team, or some of the Indians are working along with them, developing that product, inspecting that product, bringing some kind of consistency, and also accepting the diversity in that consistency. But they have very clear concept about what is quality acceptance level and what is not. So those kind of, I think that interaction is very, very important. And that's also giving a lot of knowledge, a lot of understanding to these weavers and artisans in our country as well, I'm sure. Uh, and the other example that you gave of creating a particular craft into a consistent, like, a block kind of thing, like the best example is tie-dye. A tie-dye t-shirt being manufactured in Vietnam would be converted into a print, and that's how they would make millions of pieces. But still, like, even customers like American Eagle, or like somebody like who really still want that actual tie-dye effect on that garment, like which can be made only in India. Bangladesh is trying it, but still yet to go there. Like some of the Indian workers are going there and trying to develop that kind of uh, things there. Chinese, they have really understood it. Sometimes they make it, but mostly, like, once they have made one prototype, they would like to develop it into print or make it into a mass look. But still, that look is becoming popular, which means that more demand is getting created, and some part of that market would like to go for the genuine tie-dye also, and not those printed tie-dye. So that also is an important fact, I think, for our discussion and debate, like how our designers, the younger ones who are coming into the field, like how they can use this particular knowledge to go for both. Like, we have to have that masker also, keep it in mind, so that people get to know about it, and then keep that exclusivity also, both coexists. I think that could be interesting if we can make both the things coexist, and it doesn't decline or doesn't get, small number of people knowing about it. That's something that always worries me.
Yeah, David and Pallab, you both have given me an idea what to. This is a work which we can give to our technology and marketing students who are going to the craft sector, and definitely think about how we get this thing across to the craftsmen, that sometimes the exact repetition may not be possible, but how close can they get it, which will help them get international acceptance. And also, Pallab, you are right. When the students go there, they are not telling the craftsmen what can be done, because the craftsmen are really the people who are teaching the kids. But what the craftsmen are learning from these kids are that what is the present market? What are the youngsters wanting from that? And that is what the craftsmen are looking for. I was talking to some of the craftsmen in the Gandhinagar Center who are there for the Crafts Mela. And they said that I came in 94 and 98 and I did this in Ashavadi, someone who's making saris in Ashavadi saris. He was talking about it, that how he came 20 years back, and now his children are studying here in different campuses of NIFT. So that interaction is going on. Sorry to take so much time. Jayaji, your take on the question.
Actually, I'm really interested in this question, and probably one who has been raising this thing of importance of non-similarity and loving inconsistency, and rejecting the whole idea of standardization and looking at it as a psychology. I believe that trying to please an international market, I mean, we are international just as everybody's a part of the international market. India is a huge market. Indian market is so big that even when we talk about sizing and stuff like that, if we look at the Indian market, if you're wearing a sari or a just dupatta or a stole, there is no sizing involved. So you have a huge advantage in not having to fit all kind of sizes in India. The kurta is another thing like that. You can be a little fat or a little thin. The kurta is manageable. And I feel that we It's a psychology of us feeling, we need to feel more confident of our attitude towards these things about creativity, about production, about skill. Uh, the industrial world's psychology has been imposed on us ever since industrialization, when they ruined Indian handlooms to help British mills, textile mills. And we seem to be still in our own minds stuck with that. As a teaching institution with such wide outreach, it would be wonderful, as you just picked up from what you said, if you could create a course where students actually promote inconsistencies, where they promote non-standardization. And instead of telling the craftsperson how to make it more similar for the Western market, make the Western market understand every human being is different from the other. Why should we have a product which is the same? I remember doing a first little project venture with gamchas in West Bengal, in Purulia. And the women only did gamcha and earned 60 rupees or so a day. We gave them extra yarn and they had wide looms. And we said, here, just put these bunch of colors or these bunch of colors together and do as you like. 200 saris we made. Not one was similar to the other. We had a pop-up sale in Bangalore and all 200 sold in less than 2 days. Everybody was grabbing, and I kept saying, you buy this sari because it's the only one of its kind. Just as you are one of a kind, nobody can and will have the same sari as you, because we left it to the women weavers to do a free for all. Do what you like with these colors, and they came out absolutely fabulous. I think we should impose the inconsistencies and beauty of handwork, even in a craft community of, say, Madhubani artists or tie-dye. Each one will do it. Tie-dye has still a block, which you have to then tie the knot. So the block is standardized. But in something, say, like shibori, you may have to draw the line, but you don't have to. In Japan, the shibori is not at all consistent. Each one is an art piece in itself. So even with Madhubani, a whole community of Madhubani artists, they may do the same story, image, but they won't do it the same way. Why should we require them to? I think we should be really bold in educating first ourselves and then the world that the beauty is now going to be in inconsistency, because that's how we are. That is another translation of diversity. Each human being can do something beautiful. It is that person's beauty that is being created. It doesn't have to follow a machine or a pattern. And, we have a fashion now of you can have every little button different color or different print put on a plain kurta. That becomes very fashionable. So, inconsistency can be made fashion if we term it that way. Whoever thought that fata hua jeans would be a fashion?
Absolutely.
So, you can make anything a fashion if you promote it boldly and confidently. And I think we should do this. I don't want to be any more cowed down by people who tell us it has to be this way or it has to be that way. I get irritated when people say the colors of the year are now this. Of course not. In India, the colors of the year are different. We have 101 yellows. Why should you tell us what yellow and then we find an English name for that yellow? Let's just get out of this mindset and be fantastically proud of the range of things we have, the range of people who can do it, and tell everybody, take what you get. Each one is an art piece on its own. So make that into a course. I would love to come and teach it.
Absolutely. I'm going to do that. And on your word. And it might be sooner than you think.
Sure, love it.
But I must add out here,
Yeah.
madam, that in this era of what you call Instagram and the e-commerce, definitely we are seeing that people are not looking for one particular product in thousands and hundreds of thousands of pieces.
Yes.
They are looking for that exclusivity. The
That
youngsters
is luxury.
want
That is the luxury David is defining.
exactly.
Have one piece that nobody else can have. Let it cost only 500 rupees and not 50,000.
I think personalization.
The another luxury which we are talking about is now sustainable luxury, which is going to be something for the coming few years. We are only going to talk about sustainable luxury and not mindless luxury, as we have been having for the past few years. That
Yes.
and got something far, far expensive, I'm not going to, I don't have an occasion to wear it.
Yeah.
There were designers who used to create events to sell their garments. So now we are talking of a different kind of luxury. And you are absolutely right. We at NIFT have to take this challenge, and I'm definitely going to invite you to come and teach the love for inconsistency. But I was responding to David's this thing when David said that he had to convert his handcrafted collection into a machine-made collection to satisfy that consumer, and that's what I was saying, that we send our garment manufacturing students as well as our marketing students to cluster now. So we always try to find work for them. They were doing branding for the craftsmen. E-commerce was something we were really focusing in on, but now I'm going to talk about it. Yes, and why should we always have Western countries telling us what yellow and this? NIFT is working out. By next year, I think we will have our own forecast also out for the Indian
Very
industry.
good. Very good.
Yeah.
We are working on it, and we are working on sizes also. India size project is very much on, and pandemic has delayed it by, I think, a year, because I don't think so we can go to people and start measuring them, because no one will come to us now. My next question is coming back to you, Jayaji. It is that, how do you think craft sector can be a key factor in reviving the fashion business, which is really taken a beating in the current scenario?
Fashion, I think David might agree with me. Fashion is anything you want, anything that you can wear that suits you, makes you feel happy, and suits your aesthetic, and doesn't displease too many people's aesthetic. Let's put it that way. But I also feel that having, the good thing about being in the field so long is that one can hark back 25 years ago and remember that I used to lecture people like Reena Daka or Tarun Tahiliani, Rohit Bal, when we used to have these debates on TV. And I used to keep asking them, why do you try to imitate the West? There's so much, you'll never succeed. If you try to do silhouettes or something the way the West do, use the Indian craft sector, the Indian accessory sector, the Indian textile sector. And the thing is that at that time they were all very sweet and very young, and they said, yeah, you kind of beat us to the argument. But today I think all of them who have turned to Ikat, who have turned to block prints the way Ritu Kumar led the way, and look at Goodarth's things, all so rich and beautiful. I think the kind of work that's being done, which is Indian, anybody in the world would want to wear it. And this is the beauty of, I think, what Indian fashion can do. You can be very Western. Indians are looking Western, Westerners are looking Indian today. Everything is kind of merging and getting globalized in the true sense. So the fashion industry in India has the biggest advantage and the biggest luxury of using craft and textile. And there is, as David also mentioned, so much versatility. Look at Gaurav Jai Gupta bringing in metallic stuff into wool and all kinds of things like that. There is anything you can, and Sanjay's charm has been in reviving the old, bringing back the old jazzy colors and bringing the old cow motif or the parrot motif in. It's just the way your imagination can work differently with what you already have, which is a huge encyclopedia of riches. So I don't think we should at all feel minimized in any way. We are probably richer than any part of the world. And the countries that have fashion and craft are very, very, very small countries. Vietnam, say Japan, very localized, which they wear for very traditional things. Vietnam or Thailand, who do weaving, look at their package and sell them beautifully, but it's tiny countries. It's easy for them to do. We have so much that it becomes like a glut, and we don't know how to cope with promoting and selling and packaging each one. Even just the presentation and packaging in sustainable. Like take the Bengali sari, you still go and they'll pull out the yesterday's Bengali newspaper and wrap it with that jute and that Bengali newspaper. And I would think that's the most sustainable packaging you could ever have. So let's make that a bit more stylish. You can block print the old newspaper and it looks lovely. Then we do make paper bags out of them, then make better packaging out of them, stiffen them, whatever you can do. A technology that Pallab can contribute to improve and value add to a craft product is something where you can work together. The craft sector and industrial sector can work together today and do like Ayush Kasliwal does. So everyone can be part of it. It's not a competition at all. Each one will value add to the other mutually. So I feel that designers have a world of wonderful things ahead of them.
Pallab, what do you think? How this craft sector can revive our fashion business?
I had interpreted this question slightly differently.
Okay.
I am looking at it as a threat at this point of time. Why? Because in my 28 years, like from NIFT, after NIFT, like every year, all the designers that I have interacted with in the West, like mostly in US and now in Australia, Japan and UK, Europe also, are all like dying to come to India. Every spring, summer season, when they're trying to think of what they want to do, at least 60-70% of them would like to spend some time in India. And that motivation to come to India is because of the rich heritage of colors and the variety of crafts that we have in India. How much they take the inspiration, that's been happening. I've seen it for so many years, again and again and again, and they do it. They would come and go back to the cities of Jaipur or to some other locations where like this kind of work is happening and spend those few days to get inspired. With pandemic, most probably like that is not going to happen now for this next 1 or 2 years. So that's like for me is a threat at this point of time. And how do we bridge that gap? So that's something is worrying me at this point of time, if you ask me. That's how I saw that question.
Okay. David, your take on it.
I mean, I think I touched upon this, and we all have. I couldn't agree with what Jaya had said actually more, because right now, as Pallab has also mentioned, with the kind of craft infrastructure that we have, and thank God that we do, and that everybody's talking about it, this is really the R&D laboratory of the world in the fashion business. Where else in the world can you go where you can walk down a street and get 20 meters printed, block printed? You can walk down another kilometer and get the block carved for you. You can go into a loom in Warangal and you can get someone to tie-dye the warp and the weft separately for you, according to a pattern that you want. You can weave up 50 meters and you can change every 50 meters in so many colors. You can do an infinite variety of things. So this is a laboratory. So I think for the fashion designers here, and the second point is also, again, which I come back to what Jared said, I do think, of course, the world is important and there is a global market, etc. But we are sitting on one of the largest markets of the future. This is a huge country and everybody buys clothes, everybody wants clothes, everybody is more and more interested in that. And as you mentioned also, Pallab, with social media, with Instagram, with Facebook, identity through clothing is now become an extremely powerful force. So we can also manufacture, we can also create product for this market, which is going to continue to expand. We're going through a temporary sort of maybe slow down right now, but it's going to snap back. I think who's now sitting here and going through and studying all this, this is an opportunity to gather all your forces together, study what is around you, and use this to get back into the market with very well thought out offering. And touch upon maybe some of the things you've talked about today. I mean, this question of irregularity that we were talking about. What is standardization? When are we going to redefine what is the meaning of quality? We need to start there. What does quality mean? Does quality mean that every 100 pieces is the same as the first piece? Now, if I'm talking about luxury, I'm talking about each piece being made. And we must remember that, customization, even in fashion, Look at what the French have done with haute couture. They've like about the number of women who can afford to buy haute couture in France wouldn't even fit into the palm of my hand, probably, you know. But yet they've made this industry around it and managed to sell that concept to the whole world, which has bought it. Whereas this is the one country where you can actually get clothes made completely to your requirements, and you can also do it affordably. Now, you know, we need to think about all these things. You know, we think too much about, oh, ready to wear. This is what happens in the West. We've got these particular cycles. We have been, I mean, I've been also a victim of that because this is the system in which I was trained and initially worked with. You know, those are the markets I worked with. But now more and more, and as I think about what's happening now, what we have to do, we need to now maybe switch, change track slightly. We need to open the conversation again. We need to look at these things. We need to see now, what can we make with our own resources for this market? We need to talk about sustainability. You know, in another few years, we have no choice. We can barely breathe in Delhi today. We cannot go on talking about, you know, the fashion industry contributes this extraordinary amount of industrial waste, has been one of the largest contributors to environmental degradation. We need to remember that making small, making through the craftsperson, you know, the environmental footprint of a craftsperson is invisible almost compared to the footprint of a large industrial complex. And we're not just talking about the waste that the craftsperson contributes to the environment. We're also talking about, when we talk about sustainability, we have to talk about sustaining traditional livelihoods. Too often that gets overlooked. We're always talking about what sustainability and environmental degradation, according to Western terms, is about landfill, is about waste, it's about throwing clothes away. We don't live in that culture. We actually have to be concerned about how we can sustain traditional livelihoods, because that is actually a part of the living culture of this country. And that's a part of our USP, and that's actually a part of the wealth. And if we don't recognize that, we lose that access to that. So, you know, there's so many factors here. I've touched upon many, many things. You know, I'm sorry, I've just sort of wandered all over the place. But I think all these different points come back to what you're talking about, Vandana.
Okay. Thanks, David. I'm going to sum it up after the last question and not take any more time in between. This is to Pallav. India, with its immense potential, what should be the road ahead for fashion supply chain to leverage its capability to drive the global fashion business?
Now, in this particular question, like definitely, how am I interpreting is the global business and the global fashion supply chain. So slightly we're moving away from the India crafts and art that we have. India is also sitting on a very good opportunity at this point of time. And the timing is, I would say, perfect. India has the workforce. We have a lot of people who could be the first time workers in a factory also, and people who are little experienced as well. We have all the raw materials. India is the largest producer of cotton. And also, like, the polyester fibers or anything that is going on around in the world, India has the resources of manufacturing each of those products. Investments, yes, India has developed quite a lot in terms of the economical development and GDP that is happening. Now that focus has to come back into this kind of industry, where any manufacturing setup that we are doing for apparel, even the elasticity, that employment elasticity that we talk about, is definitely much more favorable if we go on and promote this particular industry or this particular garment apparel manufacturing in India. I think that's something like we have to more seriously look into it now. We have been having a consistent export about, I think, $16 billion for a few years. Maybe like it will drop down a bit in this particular year. But this is a time like where there are a lot of geopolitical movements are also happening. There is definitely a little bit of anti-China sentiment that has been promoted by US and Australia, and also that also is happening. So this is the time where many retailers and mass manufacturers or mass retailers of other countries are also looking at India as a manufacturing hub. So this, I think, this particular question, if you're talking about specifically from manufacturing industry point of view, I think India is very strongly poised. But then the other worries are that the kind of ecosystem that got built up for this mass manufacturing in countries like Vietnam or Bangladesh, yeah, definitely have an edge over India at this point of time. We do have some opportunities to encash upon quickly, but how we go about it will make a big difference. I think every retailer or every customer today definitely is looking into India once again. Who were easily going to China, or basically all the Chinese product that was getting reaching all these destination countries and getting resold. So that has suddenly stopped at this point of time. So this is that window of opportunity that has opened up. We are in middle of pandemic at this point of time. We don't know what happened to the industry. Everybody took a hit, but we need to quickly regroup ourselves and run at full speed, because this is that opportunity which doesn't come so often. So how do we leverage this capability? We have the maximum amount of, I told you, the raw material like cotton and polyester is already happening. Even the mill sector is quite strong in India. We have the largest, I would say, after China maybe, but largest fabric manufacturing capabilities and capacities in India. Rather than exporting the raw material and the textiles, how much we should convert and make in India and then send it. Like as Jayaji in the beginning only told us about this Atmanirbhar Bharat that we are talking about now, and all the actions that is happening in that direction, I think is also creating that situation where we should be very, very successful now. And that's what I would look forward to. And I'm sure like many of you also would have the same thought process.
Okay. Thank you, Pallab. My next question, my same question now goes to Jayaji before I give it to the next person.
I'll just add to what Pallab said, because I agree with him, and he has this very good, optimistic and positive attitude about it, which is what I would always support. But I would say that the government has to look more carefully into the laws concerning factories, because we have laws which people flout, and we have lots of things where they said that they've changed the labor law, but it hasn't really worked to our advantage, both in terms of the cost of production, the exploitation of the workers, and lack of safety norms being followed. These are all problems we have. Bangladesh has them too, and they have been sources of international stories condemning the kind of working conditions. We don't want to have that. China has working conditions where it's mostly mechanized and it's very slick and clean and whatever they show people in the world, but I don't think they're that clean and honest as they would like us to believe. But we need to have even, smaller factories. We have company laws for factory acts and all these things which are completely detrimental to the cost of product being viable. And that's why we have not been able to export. Otherwise, there is no shortage of textile, no shortage of workforce. Women, in fact, are employed much more in garment factories than men. But somewhere we've not had that advantage because we also don't deliver on time. I remember somebody who had ordered from India and they just did not get it in time. Then they got faulty pieces and finally they had to turn to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka ordered some things from India and they didn't turn up in time. So we still have to work out our delivery systems and the laws which will help the product to be viable in the global market. Otherwise, production capacity, we have no shortage at all.
Sorry, David, your take on the question.
Could you just repeat that again to me, Vandana, exactly what?
What the question? You want me to repeat the question? It is.
Yeah, just look up, because I kind of like.
How do you think we are going to be able to leverage the supply chain to drive the supply chain capability of the country to drive the global fashion business?
Well, I think at the policy level, we also need to look at perhaps a more open system. That's another one. I think we need to have a little less interference. We need to have, in some cases, as we said, some of the rules, some of the regulations may not be practical. I mean, we do need to look at how easy it is to move goods in and out of a country. I think that, for example, manufacturers also need to be able to access when you're making a product that is a composite in some ways. It's a combination of different elements that sometimes are not all made in India. You may be manufacturing something in which you require a component that is, say, manufactured, say, in Vietnam to enhance your product. You should be able to have systems where you can move those goods in and out. I mean, it is happening, but
I think
something, it just disappeared. It's come back again. Is it clear now?
Yes.
Yeah, I lost everybody. So I think that's one thing. I think at a policy level to make sure that, that the manufacturing field is open and that goods can move around more easily, and that we need to have greater access to, skills and knowledge that's available everywhere. We also need to look at, as I think Palak rightly pointed out, the conversion of raw material into product. We need to focus even more on that. We need to, really sort of leverage that and make sure that much more is can be manufactured here, and we do not necessarily have to export raw materials. And I think that, that would pretty much cover all these and again, I think, that when we talk about the global market and India, I mean, I find that slightly problematic in that I think we need to look at the market, and we need to look at India as a very important part of the market too, because what we're really doing is, if we are creating two different standards of manufacture, this is what goes outside and this is what we consume. To me, there's a bit of a dichotomy there, and it can lead to an inconsistency. I think the countries the producers that have been most successful in reaching out to an international and a global market have been the ones that have addressed the home market first. Because if you can produce a product that is completely acceptable and is used, you can then take it out to the world and find consumers for it. I mean, I'll take just the most common one that I can think of, and Uniqlo. They are producing product that is essentially for their markets too. They started with that, and then they took it out. So there is a consistency of vision and a uniformity. So we are not breaking it up into these two diverse areas, global and local. I think we need to start looking at some product that crosses, because I'm not expecting everybody to wear a hand-woven sari all around the world, but you're definitely going to find a lot of ways in which that hand-woven fabric can be used in different products. So they can be, the same fabrics can be used in different, in the craft area. And in the industrial area, of course, I mean, there's a lot of product that we do use, which is applicable in all markets. So it's just a slight change in attitude.
Okay, thank you, David. I would like to sum it up by saying three things. As Jayaji said, Indian market is the largest. India is a very big country. It's the largest, this thing. And instead of trying to sell to the world, why not make our products, make ourselves buy our products, and make sure that we all wear what we are talking about, what we are making. Textile sector is the second largest employer in the country after the agriculture sector, which is saying large number of people are involved. If we start wearing what we are making, our fashion business or clothing sector, textile industry will definitely start improving. And one other I take from all of you back to the curriculum board is that we are going to talk about teaching inconsistency is the acceptable norm for our designers, for the handicraft sector, handloom and handicraft sector. David said we have to teach the world that the inconsistency why should the 100th piece be same as the first piece? And as Pallab said, we have the raw materials, we have the human resources, and we should be able to take charge of this situation and start running instead of just sitting and thinking that let pandemic go away and we do it. And that is what we have been trying to do in NIFT. We have not let the pandemic affect our curriculum, affect our academics. We have been running our classes online since 1st April practically. And our students have already gone for their internship. And January 1st, as we normally start, they'll be starting their graduation project. So this is how NIFT has been coping with it. Our crafts activities, we really went back to our thinking board and said, how do we do it? So we thought of, yes, we are not being, it's like watching a film, but the students are able to interact with the craftsmen as they are able to see you. And one takeaway from the pandemic has been that we have been able to get experts every month and discuss them, discuss issues with them, and give insights to our graduates and students. And by the way, this is an open platform. It is being this thing live on YouTube of NIFT Delhi, and that means more than 10,000 people might be also watching it, far more than the students and alumni. It might be other people. Because I saw some of the questions, and one question was from a general manager of a jute mill who has asked this question, who's not related to NIFT in any way. So thank you so much, all of you. And I now shift the mic to Raghu, who will start the ceremonies from now. Take over.
Thank you, Professor Narang, the webinar chair. Jaya ma'am, actually, when you spoke about inconsistency and when Dean ma'am was saying that it should be brought into NIFT's curriculum, I was just thinking about this. We have a general elective called Making Sense of. I think from now on, we should work on something like making sense of inconsistency.
Yeah, why
which
not?
can go across the campuses. So that's what David, I think where David and you both can be the experts. So it's ma'am, it's my request, Dean ma'am, that we can think about it in terms of making sense. I mean, it's a request as a NIFT faculty member to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking of that only, Raghu. And, I was not only thinking of general elective, which only very few people can take, but maybe something like a small mandatory workshop, which we'll do for students.
Yes. So the word like, inconsistency is going to bring a lot of value to the fashion ecosystem. That's what is the key takeaway for me and all my lovely students and alumni who are attending this show. So I picked up a few questions from the students as well as the other viewers. So I'll start with the students because they've been very enthusiastic in posting questions since the past 2 days, the moment they got this.
Raghu, it's 5:45, so you just...
Absolutely. I'm keeping a tab of time, and we are very punctual. By 6 o'clock, we are going to wind up. So quickly, we'll do this. This is to David from Tejaswini Lakra. Please tell us what keeps you motivated and inspired to design such beautiful clothing. I think they are up to your trade secret, David.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, that's a very kind comment. Beautiful things. And I think that it's so easy. I think if one is engaged in, as I said, I am a creature of, I am inspired by textiles, I'm inspired by craft, and there's so much in that which is always inspiring. And I think the most important thing to realize that one is always learning. I don't think, if I feel that, if I know it or that I've done it all, it would be very, very boring. And everywhere I look, there's always something new to learn. So I think that's what really keeps me going. And the fact that, and particularly in the arena of textiles, that I have access to this extraordinary resource.
Great. So Tejasvi, I hope you've got the answer directly from David now. So let me move to another question which comes from almost student. And probably Pallab, you can answer this. How can we balance both the technology and Indian heritage when technology is growing rapidly globally?
Yes, definitely. Technology is definitely moving at a very rapid speed. Although, like in textiles and in our apparel, for many years, like no new fabric or no new technology was there. And I think in the last 10 years, a lot of these big players across the globe have started putting more money in the R&D. But coming back to this part, like what in the first question when we were discussing with Jayaji and with David, and when Dr. Narang spoke about it, my whole concept, I'm just touching back, maybe you can tell me like if I'm going totally wrong, is that certain arts of India, how do we promote it with more in terms of, maybe like I'm not equipped to use some of these terms like Madhubani or Ikat or any many other traditional styles that we have. Now, just even on a very easy, ready-to-wear kind of garment, can we use it and how? Maybe not be exactly that art, the way the art is created, but a snapshot of it, maybe a picture of it with a very high technology, like in terms of those high definition printing or gel prints or puff prints and all, create that effect so that even the younger generation at a or even at street or level also, like people are wearing that and it's get seen and visible that okay, this is what it is, this is what it means. uh, is there a way of communicating on it, or doing much more communication so that the desire is created that okay, this is art that I should be knowing a little bit more of it? So that's something where technology can play a role, or things like the question number 3 that we had today. In fact, like India is definitely so much of inspiration for so many designers. And today, when they're not able to travel, how we use this technology to show them, to showcase them, okay, these are things that is going on in India, or this is what the art and artisans are doing at this point of time. So that these are the two areas where I think technology can play a very important role.
Right.
Sorry,
So I think that
that I
no,
could
no,
express myself.
it's no, it's perfectly all right because there's that answers the question by Vibha Arvind also. Like, how do you create awareness about, because many brands are using crafts, and how do you create the awareness? And I think you have amalgamated both these points in your answer. So it was one answer for two questions. That was really good. Thanks, Pallab. So I have one question to Jaman, uh, where it's from Satadip Datta. Sorry. Yeah. How could ma'am, fast fashion and indigenous craft coexist in the context of sustainable fashion? How do you think that craft and fast fashion can coexist?
Well, actually, sustainability followers today are talking about the beauty of slow fashion. So we don't have to use the same words. It's like slow cooking is more healthy. You can't talk about slow cooking and fast food. In the dhaba cooks overnight, but it gives it to you immediately. So we should use the dhaba technology for that kind of idea. But in slow fashion, it means, in fact, what is the sari? It's slow fashion. You wear a sari. My mother's saris 30, 40 years ago are perfectly fine, and I can wear them today. And it is that is what is sustainable, not throwing away. I once attended a seminar which was quite ridiculous because it said stores were saying how they are using their the goods that they wanted to get rid of, that they were selling it at some different price somewhere else. And in India, somebody got up and said, well, what do we do with the bed cover of last year, which we don't want? I said, how funny. You go down the street and some poor man will take it from you happily and he can use it as his roof to shield against the sun. That is our culture. Our culture is not to know what do we do with our stuff. One, we don't accumulate that much stuff. Two, we give away to others who are needy. It means working in our own culture. So sustainability for us means using local raw material. It means sustaining livelihoods. Sustaining the environment and sustaining livelihoods becomes sustainability on a much larger scale. I think if we put it into that large context, within that, you don't have to add the word fashion. It's applicable to everything.
Everybody. Thank you so much, ma'am. And David G, this is for you. It's from Mr. Devshish Roy, the Director General of Indian Jute Mills Association. So, what is the involvement of the fashion design talent pool in India in jute fabric? New initiatives in that particular area for obtaining better and softer jute fabric through viscose fiber. Should I be a bit slow?
No, I got the question, but I'm afraid I'm not very well equipped to answer that because I haven't had that much experience with the jute industry.
Okay.
And I have worked a little bit with it, and I felt that um, more work needs to be done if jute can be utilized as an apparel fabric. We still haven't yet found an apparel fabric that is completely comfortable and completely usable, let's say, user friendly. And I think I'll be very happy if the gentleman who asked the question would reach out and perhaps initiate some kind of workshops, perhaps maybe with students of NIFT or with designers who are in that space, to develop and to see how they could further development could be done utilizing jute. I think you mentioned the word viscose, so I think they are looking at blends and to see
Yes.
how we can find more fabrics that we can use that have jute components. It would be very, for home furnishings, it's very, very good, and it's been used and it's been fairly successful. And for other product, but in the apparel industry, I haven't seen enough examples of usable jute fabric.
I think more than the students, they need to work with the technical textile technologists to get
Textiles.
the fabric first user friendly before we start working on it. Yes, we have been talking about using jute in apparel for a long, long time. I think since I joined NIFT, we have been working on it with the Calcutta campus for the jute industry. But unfortunately, the jute material which is being produced is not uh, up to the apparel level. One thing which I forgot to sum up, and I remembered when Jayaji was talking about something else, is that our attitude of not delivering on time. We do not deliver what we promise. We promise a lot, but we don't deliver. And that is something I think we as the country has to change. We have an attitude of chalta hai, which works very well when we are when we are led into maybe a pandemic situation, that we don't become hyper, we don't become panic. They are not there are people who got very panicked and all that, but chalta hai attitude, when we have to do professional work, when we have to deliver, when we have to give it to the international market, we'll have to change. And that's something else, Raghu, which we'll take it to our drawing board and see how we can incorporate in our soft skill level.
Sure. Sure, ma'am. And then there's one final question, which is more of academic. I have 5 minutes left in the
Yeah,
5 minutes left, so I thought I'll take these questions from Prasad Bidappa.
yeah.
Who says, why don't fashion institutes in India make khadi and heritage handloom compulsory for graduating designers' collection, at least in part, if not in full?
We already have it, Prasad. I think you have not been coming to NIFT very often now. But yes, we have it. We Development Commissioner Handlooms and Development Commissioner Handicrafts sponsor our graduation projects. And we have about 25 to 35 sponsored collections where literally they work with khadi and handlooms. Apart from this, a lot of students work with handlooms because they love handlooms. After going to the craft sector, they fall in love with the crafts. And Sanjay is one such example who, after doing his textile design, has gone back to a craft and revived it. And there are several others. I'm not getting into the names here. But another way which we have started doing is we have requested senior industry members to give awards to the graduating collection. So if I as a student know that I'm going to get an award for using a particular kind of fabric or doing something in this, then a lot of students from a class work towards it. And we do have a award in the fashion design department, which is called Contemporary Use of Traditional Textiles, Excellence in Contemporary Use of Traditional Textiles. And a lot of students work with embroidery, printing techniques, and the fabric, this thing. We are taking care of it. I'm not defending NIFT. I'm just putting the facts on the table because some of you have been with us for a long, long time. Like there was nobody in this panel who didn't know me or I didn't know them, because that's how we work. And we definitely will take every single suggestion given by all the panelists and we incorporate it. It's always good to have this interaction because I get ideas for incorporating in our curriculum or getting something there. And as Raghu suggested, making sense of inconsistency. I'm not going to call it inconsistency. I'm going to say making sense of beauty of khadi or making sense of handloom, beauty of handloom. Yeah, Jayaji, you wanted to say something.
I was just going to be a little naughty at the end and say, call it making nonsense out of sense.
Okay. I'm sure we are going to have a full batch of students who want to do that.
Makes it catchy to get.
Sure. Fine. Time is very important, everybody, and our webinar is known for starting on time and closing on time. So my sincere thanks to Jayaji, Davidji, and Pallabji for taking out your time, accepting our invitation, coming here and sharing all your wonderful thoughts. I mean, we respect you as experts in your domains. And it was good for all my dear students, colleagues at NIFT, and also viewers from partnering institutes and others from the industry and the alumni. I'm sure you would have benefited a lot from this insightful discussion. Thanks to Dean NIFT for chairing the webinar once again, and all my viewers for your overwhelming response as usual. And special mention to Ranjini and Amit, who are the members of my team working back end and who bucketed the questions and given me what is to be asked and to who, and also the other regional industry coordinators from the 16 campuses who help us reach out. Thanks, Birendra, who's the webmaster of NIFT-HO. Again, the fourth continuous time we have done a show without any technical glitch. So we have conserved an apology so that everything went on well. So thank you, Birendraji, for making this event successful. We will meet again on 13th of December 2020 with other distinguished panelists expressing their views and opinions on fashion and luxury. Until then, Shubhratri, Namaskar, and advanced Diwali wishes to everybody. Have a safe and healthy Diwali without polluting the environment.
Happy Diwali to everybody. Thank you.
Happy Diwali. Thank you. Thank you.
Namaskar.